Thank you. Joining me now for a fair and balanced debate, Chris Plante. He's a radio host on the Chris Plante Show. And Julie Roginsky is a Fox News contributor and former political advisor to former New Jersey Senator Frank Lautenberg. So it seems, look, without getting too bogged down in the weeds, the allegation is that the Obama camp stepped in to save the union workers and not the non-union workers' pension. And although it was initially denied, it appears, according to this Republican lawmaker, that's what they did. And David Axelrod now sort of admitting that they did do something, but he says there was some greater good in terms of their reasons. Chris Plante, how does this play in Ohio? 20,000 non-union workers lost their pensions or had them gutted.
Well, first of all, people have to talk about it so that the people in Ohio are aware of what was going on here, and the people of America should be aware of what was going on here, because this is classic Chicago-style corrupt politicians where you reward your friends and you punish your enemies. We know that the unions and the UAW and union leadership are in Obama's camp and the Democrats' camp. They provide not only funding for re-election efforts, but foot soldiers out on the street for get-out-the-vote drives and other things. 20,000 people who are, and it's 20,000 families we're talking about, who worked their entire lives to build up their pensions, had them essentially destroyed, demolished. And it's another story that won't be on 60 Minutes this week. It ought to play very significantly into what's going on in Ohio, but not if no one talks about it, so I'm glad we're talking about it here.
Julie, your thoughts?
Yeah, amen. I'm so glad we are talking about this, because what we should talk about is why those pensions were destroyed in the first place. Those pensions were destroyed because Delphi was bought by a hedge fund, which Mitt Romney invested in and apparently made about $15 million off of in 2009. We don't really know because he won't release his tax returns, but about $15 million in this hedge fund that Mitt Romney invested in. They bought Delphi, and what Delphi did was essentially say, we're not paying these pension obligations. In fact, we're moving every single union job out of Ohio and Michigan. We're moving it to China and overseas. And as a result, there's about 100,000 people working for Delphi overseas and only about, 5,000 or so working here in the States. That's as a result of this hedge fund that Mitt Romney invested in. He did not want to pay, and his friends did not want to pay these people their pensions. And that's when the government had to step in and absorb some of these pension costs. They couldn't absorb all of them, but they absorbed as much as they could. I'm very glad to hear my Republican friends like Chris now saying that the government should have done more, should have actually bailed out more people. But, you know, the bottom line is this happened.
They did what they could.
Wow.
Yeah. They did the union ones.
Well, this happened. Don't forget again, this didn't happen by magic. Delphi was bought by a hedge fund. Mitt Romney invested in.
You said that. Chris, go ahead.
That's why.
Yeah, that's extraordinary adherence to the party talking points. It's almost dazzling. Yeah, it's, of course, a hedge fund that Mitt Romney doesn't manage. Other people manage it. And it's what we're talking about here is the Obama administration's role. Mitt Romney had no direct or indirect role in any of this, but an extraordinary attack out of
Well, but can I ask you about this? Because this whole debate... I'm sorry, go ahead.
Hang on. Look, it's not about Mitt Romney. It's about whether Tim Geithner and the Treasury Department under Barack Obama stepped in to reward their friends while sacrificing the pensions of 20,000 families in Ohio. That's what this is about. It's about their stonewalling Congress as they attempt to perform some oversight role here of this administration. It's another scandal. It is another case of Chicago corruption rewarding friends and everyone else be damned.
But I want to ask you about this, because this whole deal with the bailout of the auto industry and where Romney stood on it and where President Obama stood on and so on has become an issue because Team Obama really thinks that this is going to be a winner for them in Ohio, in Michigan, and so on. And it led to this exchange at the debate on Monday night. Listen.
But the president mentioned the auto industry and that somehow I would be in favor of jobs being elsewhere. Nothing could be further from the truth. I said these companies need to go through a managed bankruptcy. And in that process, they can get government help and government guarantees, but they need to go through bankruptcy to get rid of excess cost and the debt burden that they'd built up. And fortunately,
Romney,
the president
took what you said.
Fortunately, the president, you can take a look
Governor
at the op-ed.
Romney, you did not say that you would provide governor help.
I said that we would provide guarantees, and that was what was able to allow these companies to go through bankruptcy, to come out of bankruptcy. Under no circumstances would I do anything other than to help this industry get on its feet. And the idea that has been suggested that I would liquidate the industry, of course not. Of course not.
Let's check the record.
That's the height of silliness.
I
have never said I would liquidate the industry.
Governor,
I want to keep the industry going and thriving.
Julie, the op-ed that he wrote, that Mitt Romney wrote, specifically says the federal government should provide guarantees for the post-bankruptcy financing and assure car buyers their warranties are not at risk. He wanted them to go through a Chapter 11 bankruptcy, which is not liquidation. It's a restructuring. And then the federal government will be there to provide guarantees to help them emerge healthy from it. Do you deny that? You tell me, as the Democrat on this panel, who was right in that exchange?
Well, in that debate, I frankly don't recall that Mitt Romney had said, and I have to look at the op-ed again, and so if he said that, I will take your word for it. But I will also say that Mitt Romney, of course, profited from the government bailout of the auto industry by virtue of the fact that, again, he invested in this hedge fund to Chris's...
But I'm not looking for a talking point on this. It's not
a talking point, Megyn. It's reality.
This is why I raise it, because that was a big deal, what his position was on the op-ed and what his position was on the bailout. And they had that exchange the other night. And the reason it caught our attention, other than people are interested in it, is David Letterman, who is no conservative and certainly no fan of Mitt Romney, said this about that exchange last night.
But here's what upset me last night. This playing fast and loose with facts. And the President Obama cites the op-ed piece that Romney wrote about Detroit, let him go bankrupt, let him go bankrupt. And last night he brings it up again. Oh, no, Governor, you said let him go bankrupt, blah, 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 let him go bankrupt. Blah. And Mitt said, no, check the thing, check the thing, check the thing. Now, I don't care whether you're Republican or Democrat, you want your president to be telling the truth. You want the contender to be lying.
Julie?
I'm happy to see David Letterman has checked the record. I remember a headline that said, let Detroit go bankrupt.
New York Times wrote that headline.
Well,
it's right here.
You know what, Megyn?
The New York Times added the headline. The op-ed piece was written by Mitt Romney and called for government guarantees.
You know, what I find always interesting is that when this was a very unpopular policy back in 2009, and all the Republicans were saying this was a horrible bailout, how could we possibly do this, government motors, so on and so forth, not saying that we should contribute one dime to the bailout of the auto industry, not one dime to the pension bailout. All of a sudden now they're coming in and saying, as is David Camp, who wants to hold hearings, why didn't we do more? Why didn't we use more government money to bailout?
I got to give Chris the quick last word coming up against the break. Go ahead, Chris.
You know, it's just extraordinary. We keep circling back to the same falsehoods. And this is about Obama administration corruption, bailing out their friends, rewarding their friends. 20,000 families were scrawed in this whole thing. The fact that David Letterman is on the side of Mitt Romney, I'm going to walk outside to a red sky.
All right, guys, thank you both so much.